my favorite part of this.
You were pretty solid at the last meeting.
All right, well, we're going to call the meeting
My
to order. It's
national
approximately
eyeballs
7
are
p.m.
out, too, so-
Welcome, everybody, to the
We'll all be winking.
Thursday, February 15th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals right here in the town of Middleton. Again, the meeting of the board are video and audio recorded. So
They are.
if you didn't know that and you want to watch this later on because you can't sleep, you can tune in. All right, anyway, first item on our agenda is the approval of our January 25th meeting minutes. Are there any corrections, additions, edits that anyone has relative to the minutes of January 25th? Anything? Bueller?
No, sir.
Not from.
No, nothing?
No, sounded
Okay.
good.
So I'll accept the motion to accept the minutes of January 25th?
I'll make a motion.
So moved, okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second it. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. All right. Next item, continued public hearings, 10-18 Boston Street, Villbridge Acquisitions, application for comprehensive permit. Do we have anyone here? Ah, we do.
Katrina, I think I need a Mullins form.
Yes, you do. You don't have to sign it before.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
No, but I can give it to you.
All right.
Okay.
Lars Onion from Villbridge Acquisitions. Thank you. Good to be here again. I don't know, Katrina, should I scroll down for the status update file?
Katrina, appreciate it.
Sorry.
It's okay. Should I, I didn't know we're supposed to do the touchscreen, the status update
Actually, you can
report?
try the touch is working tonight, but I can pull it up. What do you want up there?
Was the status page there at the very bottom? Perfect. So just to remind, at the meeting in late January, we reviewed civil and septic further, but we also, member Renault was not here, TEC was not here, so we wanted to follow up on that again tonight, as well as we did provide responses to the last round of peer review comments from the traffic peer review. So we provided that information, and we received a subsequent peer review letter. We provided some more responses just this past Monday. And then we had on our agenda to discuss the waivers and preliminary discussion on decision conditions. So that's what we had on the agenda for this evening. So I guess first ask the board, would they prefer to tackle traffic or civil and septic first?
Let's go to civil and septic.
Okay. So on civil and septic, we provided, the last set of reports, I believe, was with the January 25th hearing. TEC had received it but hadn't had enough time to provide a response. They subsequently did. We also had some follow-up items from the discussion on the 25th, which they also had the opportunity to review, and they provided their peer review comments. And then we received some of their comments just last Thursday as we were submitting our material, so we were able to get our responses to their comments folded into their drawings like real time, so that hopefully we think we're resolved with everything. With us tonight is Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates to carry forward with that conversation, and I believe Jared is here from TEC. Yeah, okay, sorry. So happy to have either group come speak with you first, or however you'd like to tackle the topics.
Okay, I'm going to defer to my colleague to my left here, and who would you like to hear first?
I don't know. Who feels like leading off? Go for it.
You,
It's
your
all,
choice.
it's all good.
Okay.
Either way.
Thank you.
Want the plans up there?
I don't, we'll see. I don't think so. I don't think I need them right away. Good evening. For the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. We had received TEC's full comprehensive review, and we were in agreement with everything that was there. The only comment that needed kind of immediate action was a comment regarding the stormwater infiltration system and the configuration of the manifold and the elevations of the inverts. So we got on the phone with Jared and explained or understood where he was coming from. We concurred that there was a little misstep there in that we had all of the inverts on the manifold the same, and we needed to get the ones to the treatment isolator row lower and the other ones higher. So we made that change to the plans, got that plan to Jared, and he followed up with an email that said, yeah, that looks like it's all set. Everything else in the commentary there, I think we're in agreement on. So I think we're at a point where we are satisfied. I think there's some comments that are ripe for conditions of approval. I don't think that we need to do anything further with either the plans or the calculations at this point. So we're kind of resting with regard to the civil engineering, but obviously you want to hear it from Pete from TEC with regards to how they feel.
TEC here tonight. There we go. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Peter Ellison with TEC. Generally, I agree with what Mr. Pezzanola just presented to the board. We've gone through, we've made a pretty comprehensive effort on the stormwater piece. Anywhere that we felt there was kind of any ongoing or outstanding issues, we've recommended conditions of approval that could potentially be incorporated by the board. There was one comment in the latest version related to mounding beneath one of the stormwater systems, specifically towards the Blue Haven site. I think that's been addressed by the applicant. In my opinion, I think they're doing the best case scenario, the best that they can possibly do to reduce stormwater flows and groundwater recharge toward that site. And with that being said, I guess I'll turn it back over to the board and answer any questions you may have.
Just one question. I know this came up, and we have some of the residents here from next door, and there was some concern about stormwater and the infiltration and what was going to be happening next door. And I know we addressed some of those comments the last time. I'm presuming as part of your review, you also considered those concerns as well?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. We've looked at, I think, all of the infiltration systems at the site, and we generally concur with the design of all of them at this point. We're comfortable that they're doing what they need to do to meet the standards with their system.
Okay. All right, let's go to the members. Mr. Nall.
Well, I think I'm in agreement. I took a little look after I watched the last meeting, and kind of just looking at overall topography and where the groundwater should be going. So it looks to me like, honestly, there's a divide that runs right through the middle of the Blue Haven project that sends half of the flow towards, if you want to think of like the golf course property, and then another half that goes towards the outlet from Middleton Pond. So looking at the site for 10 Boston, I'm assuming that it goes actually towards the outlet from Middleton Pond, so it's not even actually flowing towards you folks. So there's a ridge that kind of was cut down a little bit through the site as part of the development, but it's pretty clear where that divide line was. So I think it's addressed from my perspective. So.
Okay. Craig, anything? No? Ann? No? Other Ann?
Is this the point where we talk about water supplies or not?
If you wanted to, we could. We could, if you wanted to.
Good.
Yeah. Have we really addressed that yet? Whether the water was approved?
We have had discussions with Danvers Water. Their feeling is that a formal application to them for water connection is premature. We do have major water mains in both Boston Street and Route 114. I think they're 24-inch in 114, and I think it might maybe the same size in Boston Street. We had planned on, they had expressed that they didn't have a concern with the localized water volumes and pressure, but they would have to, upon a formal application to them, they would have to have their consulting engineer run it through their model to make sure that that was the case. But seeing the size of those mains, there's, in my mind, my opinion, there's not an issue. So they didn't see an issue with this project whatsoever with regards to the demands. They just have that formal process, and they thought that it was premature to basically make an application at this time for physical connection, because we're still have to finish this permitting, and then we have to also permit the retail, and they both have, they'll both be brought to Danvers Water at the same time.
How are we irrigating the greenery? Are we doing,
We haven't figured that out yet. And the reason why I say it that way is because of that reaction. And I need to learn more, quite candidly, I need to learn more to understand what the issues are there, so that we can make sure we're addressing the best we can. We've started with a landscaping plan that tries to focus on a lot of drought-tolerant species, but then I honestly need to understand better what the concerns are and how best to incorporate some sort of a landscape management plan with what we have designed. And that's why, for example, with our waivers table, which we'll be discussing later, we have reference in there to an irrigation well, but that
draws
as
off
you-
the river, so you'd have to get permission with that, right?
Oh, I don't know, and that's.
It's just so many yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, but we were just trying to establish that as a tool, but we still need to really understand what we need to do to respond to the fact that, I don't live here, so I don't have as familiarity as you do with the levels of water alerts that I've certainly seen the signs for in town when I've come over the summer months, but that's the sort of thing we need to get smarter about to find out what we need to do there. So at the time, we have not indicated an irrigation well or a well house or anything like that until we understand better what we need to do.
Anything else, Ed? Okay. I do have one question from the last time. We know that the drainage from the site, some of it is accommodated by the state Mass DOT drainage system, goes into their system.
Yes.
Have we had any correspondence with them relative, because generally they don't like off-site drainage coming into their system. Have we had any discussions with them yet about?
No,
We're gonna do that?
we anticipate that when we have to go to them for access permit, that they'll want to see full drainage calculations to demonstrate that we're not sending any more water their way, which is what we do.
So you'd be
There is-
relying on the fact that it's an existing condition that they're already allowing?
Right, and we're not, their main concern is surficial water coming onto their roadway and becoming a nuisance to them. And we're not sending any surface water, but we are continuing to rely on that 8-inch that exists into their system. And their system was, that whole system was upgraded in 1990. So it goes north from in front, and then it discharges to the
Box culvert.
east, yeah.
So there'll be more to come on that. Obviously, we'll be interested to see how that's gonna, if that in any way affects what you've been presenting thus far, so, okay. All right. All right, before we go to traffic, we'll go to the public. If there's anyone from the public that has any questions on what we've discussed so far this evening, name and address, please.
Fred Feldman, 27 Raoul Lane, Blue Haven. I'm here with the board of Blue Haven. I appreciate everything that's been said tonight and the peer review, and I don't want to rehash the water table issue and the drainage issues because we've done that for the last year. Through the chair this time, I would like to ask some specifics on, with all the numbers that we haven't heard, and I know they're here, what impact number-wise does it have where our water table is so critical? I know the numbers are there. What does it actually do drainage-wise to our water table where it's so critical? I know it's been calculated. I'm curious to know, what does it actually do to our water table I know those numbers are there. And the other thing is, based on what Kristen Kent's letter, her supportive letter last time, has the septic design already been approved? And, you know, that said, if it hasn't, I would again ask that, we know this is happening, and I appreciate that it's happening, and something has to happen, and it should happen, but could we ask that it not be denied, but just delayed, as Kristen said, that it works hand in hand with the septic system, so it would be no harm done to anybody if it were not approved until the septic design were approved, because if the drainage system is approved prior to the septic system being approved, she said that could be an issue, because they work so closely together, that if one is approved prior to the other, and, you know, the developer could have asked or worked them together. That was his option, to do one ahead of the other. So to approve one prior to the other one being designed may create a problem. So again, I'm glad that something's going in there, but I think that I would just ask that don't deny it, put it on hold. If it looks like it's going to work, great, but just wait until the septic is approved to make sure that they work together the way they should, so that we don't have a problem. So just, you know, what does it actually do to our water table as designed? And if I could just ask, please don't approve it, put it on hold until the septic is approved, then just approve them both at the same time. Thank you.
Okay. Does the applicant want to address any of that?
We had done a full mounting analysis, and then we provided an exhibit that showed the water table or the mounding impact at various distances away from the source, being the septic system and the infiltration area. And it ranges between 1/10 and 2/10 on the Blue Haven property. And we had a long discussion or information that was submitted with regards to just the nuance of the Hantush mounding calculation methodology and what that really means with regards to the level of accuracy. But essentially what we're saying in that is that that's within the tolerances, and it's essentially de minimis or negligible at those 1/10 and 0.1, 0.15, and 0.2 as shown on that exhibit. With regard to the septic system, we have designed the septic system, and the plans reflect the design of the proposed septic system. It's 23 2x2 trenches. It's a pressure dose system. We have shown the bottom elevation being 4 feet above the seasonal high groundwater, plus the mound that we have to add to it. And all the grading and information is sensitive to that design. What we haven't done is submitted a formal septic design plan to the Board of Health for approval, and that's totally not, it's one of those things within 40B that's not part of the jurisdiction of this board, because although it's issued by a local board, they're doing that under the administration of Title V, the State Sanitary Act. So it's our intent to get the comprehensive permit and to then submit for that state permit. If something were to change with regards to the drainage in response to the Board of Health's review of that, then we would incorporate that into final plans. And just so I know the board understands this, but for the neighbors' benefit, what's very common in a Chapter 40B decision, and I would imagine that when Mr. Talaman starts to put together a draft, it'll have this condition. There's a very common condition that requires the submission of final plans. Envisioning that we have other requirements that we need to satisfy, such as Title V, and that those final plans would not only incorporate any changes that are are born from the conditions of your decision, but anything that comes up in those instances, those other approvals. And this board has the ability to re-engage third-party peer review to make sure that, yeah, what we said we were doing, we're doing, and that we've satisfied all those conditions, and that those final plans are compliant with the decision. If there was a change within those plans that this board had to consider, there is a process within the Chapter 40B regulations for this board to consider that change and to deem that change either substantial or insubstantial. If you deem it substantial, then you have to reopen the public hearing. If you deem it insubstantial, then it's approved with all of the other slight modifications that will come through that final plan process. So I think there's not a need to wait. I think the board can issue the comprehensive permit with these types of conditions. We can move forward with the other approvals that we need from Board of Health for Title V and Danvers Water. We can also begin to submit and get into the discussion of the retail development and some of the roadway changes that might happen there. And I think all of those things are going to continue to evolve and move down. But you always have that final plan process before we start any construction on the 40B that we've got to satisfy.
So, and this may be for council, if the decision has a performance standard in it based on what the original design was, and the septic design modified or affected that performance standard, they would have to come back.
That's right. I mean, Joe's clearly familiar with some of the boilerplate that I put in there. You know, they get to choose their own sequencing. Would it be nice if everyone was doing all the permits at once and they all tied up? It's just not really realistic. Developers will make a choice here. This is not an atypical choice in terms of sequencing. This is the big permit here. And we will have provisions in there that'll have a period, usually 45 days, at least 45 days prior to the issuance of building permits. There's going to be a final plan review period whereby you re-engage with TEC and your other professionals to make sure that the plans match up. And if the plans show, you know, they're going to show more detail, but if they show substantive changes or any changes to speak of with respect to the project configuration or alterations of the infrastructure plan, and they have to present them to you by way of a change. They might suggest that if it's not affecting the project, that it's a minor change and you can consider it without a hearing, but you have an opportunity and there's a specific time period for it. So we capture all that stuff in the boilerplate.
Okay.
And now, because this is a separate septic permit, I'll probably make a specific reference to that, but pretty tried and true.
I mean, to be honest with you, I've always done, even my private sector days when I was doing the early 40Bs, that's the sequence. So you do the septic at the end, you typically design it right now. You included it in your mounting analysis, so you showed how it combines. It goes a little bit higher because they combine. It sheds off by the time it gets to the Blue Haven property line. So, and plus, I still think it's still going the other way from you. So the hand tooth method doesn't really look at the water flow. It just is kind of a stagnant type of thing, saying how it will come up, basically, is how it works. There's other calculations that show the flow component, but I think it's overkill for this, especially considering it's not going, this site's not really contributing to the groundwater in that area. You're actually sending it towards them, depending on which house you're in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So obviously, we want to be sensitive to the neighbors, but it sounds like this is a typical process, so we'll continue with that process. So, seeing as how we're all hydrated now, let's talk traffic. All right? Is Mr. Dirk, I believe, is here? We missed you the last time, Jeff, so nice to see you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Jeffrey Dirk, Managing Partner with Vanessa & Associates. Just by way of an update to kind of where we've been and where we are now, TEC issued a comprehensive review of our transportation assessment about mid-November that had a series of comments for us to address. Some of those were related to what we heard from the board as well, the most significant of which was to address how we were considering the Lot 3 development in relation to the residential development. So since that time, we have issued a response to that letter. That response was provided on January 18th that included all of the information that TEC had requested, and they then had an opportunity to provide a letter back to us. I believe we received it last Thursday. It was dated February 8th, and as Lars had mentioned, we provided the response to that letter on Monday. So obviously not expecting that TEC's had a chance to look at that. The substance of TEC's comment letter, upon review of the additional information that we provided, there was no requested additional technical analysis that we needed to address. As it related to the residential project, a couple of things that they had asked for us to really commit to, and we're flushing out their thoughts as to potential mitigation measures for the residential project. So the first thing dealing with traffic operations, and we spent a fair amount of time discussing that with the board the last time I was here before you. We know that the 114 corridor is congested, and the traffic flow from Boston Street to Maple Street, as that flows kind of in the Z fashion that's there, has some operational issues, and that results in queuing and delays at the intersections. We had provided some analysis to suggest that the amount of traffic that we're producing as a part of the residential project alone could be addressed to some extent through some signal retiming at the three intersections, those three intersections being Boston Street, Maple Street, and then the Lake Street Central Street intersection to the north. TEC took a look at that analysis, specifically the mitigated analysis that we had done, and concurred that in most instances that retiming would offset the impact of the residential project. It doesn't make things better. The queues are still there. One of the dynamics that happens, as we also had the conversation, was about the difficulty of getting those intersections, the three intersections, to work in a fashion that doesn't create a lot of additional queuing when we're trying to retime those traffic signals. What TEC had suggested is that, and I'll just kind of remind you as to what our initial commitment was as it relates to the signal retiming. We were going to retime the signals once prior to occupancy because we have existing conditions that require some level of improvement at those intersections. And then we would go back out and reassess and adjust those signals upon achieving 80% occupancy. So that was about 48 residential units at the site. TEC asked us to take that a step further and say not only just do those adjustments from a plan set implemented, but that we work with them, the town, and Mass DOT to perform field adjustments. The field adjustments go beyond just having someone program the controller or let the intersections operate and then they kind of go away. It requires that you then go back and sit out there and look at how the traffic actually flows, see where the backups happen, do it during each of the critical time periods of the day, and then make fine-tuning adjustments to the signals, all three of them, to be able to make sure that what we're looking for is to try to convey traffic from one intersection to the next intersection without creating backups. And so those field adjustments would allow for that fine-tuning to take place as well. So we've said that we would do that at each of those stages. So initial retiming prior to occupancy, then the field adjustment, go back and look at it at 80% occupancy, then do another field adjustment after that. And so we've committed to doing that. The other thing that they had asked was a clarification as it relates to the connection between the residential project and the commercial project. Our initial traffic study showed traffic being able to pass and repass between those two sites. When we responded to their comment, we said that's not what's intended. We're not going to have residential traffic going through the commercial property to come out to South Main Street. So we removed that. They asked for clarification as to, is that going away completely or is it going to be there in some fashion? That connection will be there, but it's going to be gated and for emergency vehicles only. The fire department will tell us the type of gate, how they want it actuated, whether it's going to be a Knox box or whether it's going to have an Opticom system or something like that. But they'll tell us how they want that gate to function, so we did clarify that as well. Lastly, as it relates to the site plan and some of the things that Joe was going through, I think more related to parking, there was a request that we look at the ability to provide at least a couple of spaces, and it was suggested we have 2 spaces that are for emergency vehicles, that those also be designated for use by ride hailing, so Uber, Lyft, and as well as for DoorDash. So it would really be short-term parking for those 2 parking spaces. So we said really to the extent that the board is agreeable to that, that we would provide the appropriate signing in those spaces to allow for that type of service to take place. So again, we've issued a response. That was really the items that we've addressed in the latest response letter. And so we're waiting to hear back from TEC at this point. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
So I have a couple, as you might expect. So all of those signals, they're not interconnected, correct?
The Boston Street and Maple Street are connected. The Lake Street, Center Street is not a part of that system.
Boston Street and Maple Street are interconnected.
Correct. That's our understanding.
Central Street is not.
It is not, no.
And so, not to, say, burden the developer with putting an entirely new signal system in. Implementation of, say, some sort of an adaptive system, right? Because I appreciate the whole, we're gonna tweak the timing. We're gonna try to make the timing better. But the fact that they're not, all 3 of them are not connected, and the fact that we have adaptive technology that could help via time of day, cycle length, all that kind of stuff that you know about, right? I'm just thinking that again, short of redoing everything, that would just be at least one more benefit of helping this work a little bit better, because I agree with you. Those queues are going to be forever, right? And I don't want to get into VC ratio again, because you and I know where that is,
Yes.
right? TEC, do you have any comments on the traffic piece, or were you just here tonight to talk about the other stuff?
So, Peter Ellison with TEC again. I'm pinch hitting for Sam. My background is in stormwater. Mr. Chairman, you're far more knowledgeable in this field than I am, so generally agree with Mr. Dirk's summary of our letter and the back and forth. We have some recommendations in here for conditions that the board could take and move forward if you do end up going in that direction. But no specific comments beyond that.
Okay. And again, I just think that I'm not saying that we need to have the Cadillac, but I'm also not saying that, we can do this with just, confetti and some gum and hopefully it works better. You know what I mean? So that's just kind of where I'm at with this. At the end of the day, DOT has to approve whatever we're doing because they own it. But I still think that I think it's an investment. Because the other thing, and this goes to Lars and the rest of his team, if people can't get there, especially if you go to this next phase, whatever that's going to be, they're just not going to come, right? And we hear at meetings all the time, people complaining about the traffic. And it may not just be the person that's driving through Middleton to get to Andover. It's going to be people coming out of the property that they're stuck in a line of traffic. So anyway, that's just my epistle. I'll move on to the members. Mr. Renault.
No, I thought that we had talked about it the last meeting you were at, that we were kind of looking at, kind of this phase, and then you'd provide us the bigger picture of how everything was going to fit together and kind
I
of present
apologize.
that.
Yeah, we actually did.
Did I?
We did as a, and I apologize. Okay. That was one of the requests from TEC. So the response to comments that we delivered in around January 18th thereabouts included treating all of the lots, 1, 2, and 3, with nothing's happening on 1, but 2 and 3, and calling it a single project, and then analyzing what the impacts of that would be, and then assessing what the mitigation would be. So the mitigation, as we go to kind of that next step of adding in the Lot 3, it's generally consistent with what we're doing for Lot 2. You still have some traffic signal retiming that's going to take place. The need for the adaptive system, I think, is clear. That's what needs to be in place. And then, whether or not there's more robust improvements, we think that from the standpoint of at least at the Maple Street intersection where we have a high crash location, you start to need to implement some improvements there for sure to be able to get that to work. In order to get traffic to flow, appreciably better, there's significant road work that has to take place out there. And it's a question of really, I think, Lars is working with the select board on advancing that larger infrastructure improvement project, independent of what's taking place here. But really, you need a widening of 114 and a widening of Boston Street to make that to take place. And I know Lars is working, outside of these two projects to try to get those things going forward. But that's what the complete project, that's what it says needs to be done.
So, interesting, yesterday, Mass DOT through ACEC presented on RSAs, right, road safety audits. And at the end, they needed someone to start the question, so Abby Goodman picked me. And one of the questions was, it's great to do an RSA as part of a project like this because we know it's a high crash location. But it falls short of implementing any of the short-term improvements that an RSA
Correct.
is recommending. And I'm not saying we blow up the intersection and start over, which really kind of needs to be done, but we can't burden that on somebody who is the last one at the party. Because if that were the case, we should have been talking to Blue Haven, and we should have been talking to everybody else that's up and down the street, right? But I think that's another thing, that what is in the RSA, sort of short-term, low-cost improvements that are going to improve safety, right? So I'm kind of hanging on an adaptive system to make things work a little better, implementing some of the recommendations that came out of the RSA, right? And then thirdly, we had talked about potentially, particularly because this project is providing housing and increasing job growth and all this other kind of stuff, considering a MassWorks application.
Correct.
Was there any further discussion about that?
I think that's moving forward.
There is in the most recent response, us making a contribution towards a MassWorks grant, but the MassWorks grant would not be done by us. It would be done by the town.
That's right.
They would need to be the
Yep.
applicant.
You
So-
support it, though, obviously, right?
I'm sorry?
You provide a support letter or whatever it would be that's needed.
Sure, yes, yeah. So the MassWorks grant and the widening of the intersection, that's all part of what that discussion with the select board is about, the development agreement to make that possible.
And just so, relative to MassWorks, because Bill and I have done many of them, the benefit, the option for the town to do a MassWorks grant is supported because there's a development partner that's part of it, right? And generally, it revolves around housing, it revolves around job growth, all that kind of stuff, right? That makes the town's application attractive to the the Department of Economic and Community Development, right?
Right.
So that's why, considering this, it's probably a good option to do the work that needs to be done, as opposed to just trying to Band-Aid some of this stuff. Let me go to some of the other members, though. Craig, any comment? No?
Popsicle headache. No.
What's that?
Popsicle headache? No.
Possible headache. Okay. Ann? Nothing? And the other Ann?
Any EV charging stations? Have you thought about that?
What we said in our response letter, because we know the standards in Massachusetts are changing very rapidly, is we will do whatever is required from the building permit by the time we file, because we suspect it's going to be higher than what's required today. So we will certainly be required to do that part of it. We may want to do more than that, just from what we view as the market opportunity, but we just need to see where the building code ends up by the time we file.
Lars, again, this MassWorks discussion is with the Select Board right
Yes.
now?
Yep.
Okay.
And is it just the MassWorks or is it all the mitigation? Because that should be something that's discussed here.
So the mitigate, so that's.
I've heard of, just to interrupt you, which I totally just did, I apologize for that, but that's interesting. I haven't really seen a select board jump in while an active project's going on. Usually they plug in at the beginning and then it comes here to be vetted out, so.
Yeah, and Jay may want to jump in on this as well, but essentially, and this is the essence of what we've been trying to simplify, because as we had been talking about this application, we talked about how things were kind of overlapping with the retail, the access to South Main Street, some of the other things. It was just getting too complicated when we have two separate permitting regimes. So what we try to do is decouple that a little bit for purposes of permitting. And the way I've thought about it is there's the 40B permit, there's the retail or the local permitting permit. And this development agreement is a separate thing that is not about capturing mitigation. It is about the request of the select board to us was, is there something we can do to not mitigate your project, but actually make things better? And so that's been the driver behind that discussion. And so that's what has been discussed, which we referenced a little bit, which is the idea of, is there the potential of widening the intersection, adding turning lanes to not just get back to where we are today, quote unquote, but to actually make it substantially better. So it's not meant to be a mitigation, it's really meant to be a community benefit thing that's beyond the scope of what we need to do to mitigate our project for the 40B or for.
That clarifies a ton. It would be good to maybe have a letter from them to let us know that, but.
Yeah,
that's
so
good.
that, I mean,
You know,
it's been evolving for a long time.
Sure,
And there's
sure.
been discussions, and Lars and his team has been great in terms of talking and keeping the discussion going. Jeff's provided a lot of input as well. I think I brought the chair into some, at least copied you on an email. We've been working on trying to simplify exactly what we're doing, because the mitigation, like Lars said, is a little bit bigger than just this project.
Yep.
And it also involves more, probably the commercial project, because it involves easements across that portion of the property.
I get you. Okay.
We're trying to come at it from a way where the town would be taking the laboring or on the cost, but the property owner would be providing, subject to that there'd be no zoning non-compliance, some available space for easements.
Okay.
As a way to do it, and just, it's really pretty basic in its terms. We wanted to distill it to that.
Right.
I wouldn't say that it's fully a parallel track. I think it's more of like a Venn diagram.
I follow you, yeah. There's
Yeah,
overlap
you
for
know,
sure.
so I think it does touch a little bit when you think holistically about how this project and what they're proposing here for mitigation fits in within a larger scheme of things that you try and lock down a little bit. I would say that while not requiring that, because it's a separate entity, at least having a nod to it in terms of your continued deliberation on this, knowing that it's in the background. We were working on drafts now, who knows where it goes, really?
Sure.
But there's a good faith effort to do it in a way that is cost-friendly to them, and the benefits to us, if we can take on the cost of some of those improvements with the turning lanes especially, could benefit the whole community.
The concern I have is that we end up at an impasse on things that we're looking to mitigate traffic, while at the same time, there's negotiations going on with the select board as to what they see is this other project.
Yeah.
Right? And we end up like this.
I think
right?
they're more
That's kind of
cumulative, though. I think they're kind of, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong here, that's a separate set of improvements. I think the mitigation you're talking about, and you say kind of being last to the party, this is the stuff them mitigating through this permitting process. This other stuff, although they kind of work together a little bit, they can work separately too. So I don't think they're dependent on each other necessarily, but I think it's important to, at least to Bill's point, to kind of discuss them here, because it's part of an overall scheme to not just get back to a kind of a level condition that we're at now, but to maybe have a long-term goal of improving it. And, you know, might get picked up a little later in the actual permitting for the commercial piece too.
Which is why I think the MassWorks thing is an opportunity to supplement the cost of doing this. Have you talked to the folks in the city of Lynn? Have you talked to the folks in
Wakefield.
in Wakefield?
Right.
And any of these other places that have received MassWorks grants? I mean, Lynn they've had 4 MassWorks grants, anywhere between $1.8 and $3.7 million. So it's an option that defrays a lot of the development mitigation cost. But at the same time, you know, addresses these things that need to be addressed, that really need to be addressed. So, you know, sort of the short-term thing for me, I can't speak for the rest of the members, but, you know, considering this adaptive system, and considering sort of the short-term RSA recommendations, you know, that kind of stuff is kind of where I'd be hoping we're getting to.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
The proposed modifications down the line,
would those affect the site plan for this project? Like, specifically, with the turning lane that you would have to add there, would that have any effect on the site plan? So that,
Yes, there's the potential that specifically for this 40B, we would need to come back and request a small change to the waivers, essentially. So if you think about you can visualize kind of the curve of Boston Street as it approaches South Main, basically the east half of our frontage, the curve is you need to take a little bite out of the frontage of the site to allow for, because what we've designed in that case is a MassDOT compliant complete streets solution, and so there's a 10-foot wide mixed-use path in addition to adding another turning lane there. And so there would be a slight reduction in the open area calculations, for example. So because it's an easement, it's not a taking of land, and it doesn't move everything, but there would be a couple of the calculations where we would need a request to change to the
We
open area.
could pre-bake that waiver, though. I mean, on a
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
So
we don't have to wait.
I'd rather-
I mean, you don't have to ever use it.
that's what I'm saying, like, bank it, right? Like,
Right, you
essentially,
just-
you bank
I mean,
the use in
If
the
we
future.
could get
so
a
you don't have
hold
to
of
come
it
back.
now through whatever,
Yep.
even if we can approximate it now, and I'm sure Joe can get it on a plan with Jeff's help, and not that you're not capable, Joe, but maybe Jeff could help a little. Let's just pre-bake it now and have it as kind of a shadow waiver, I would say. Let's get smart about it now, so you don't have to come back.
Well, the other thing
Here.
is a fallback, right? So say all of this goes by the wayside. I mean, I think the town should be getting something, whether it's part of the design cost if we were to take it on or something. If all of this doesn't work out, we can't get an agreement, we don't get there. I think we need some type of belt and suspenders for the town to get something out of this. I mean, we don't get a lot here, and I mean, in my day-to-day, I can tell you my town gets a lot. And, this would be significant costs for off-site mitigation. I know you're giving property, that's great. I mean, that's happens in my day-to-day too. So, I don't want to lose an opportunity here where if things don't quite work out and then the town's now stuck to pay the whole nut to pay for the rest of the design, whether it's like an offset mitigation cost for just that, so if all of this doesn't work out, because with the separate tracks, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because, this is the process, we're here,
Okay, and I guess what
You
I would
follow,
say is-
was that clear? I don't know if it was, because I feel like I was rambling a ton,
No,
but.
no, I think so, and I think this is kind of another version of what we were struggling with last fall, where things kind of start overlapping and enmeshing together. I look at it a different way. So I look at it as, there's the 40B permit, there's the 40B impacts, and there's a 40B mitigation. That should stand on its own. There's the retail permit, the retail mitigation, and that should stand on its own. And then there's this community benefit of improving the intersection beyond just mitigating the project, and that stands on its own. But there's always the potential to have them overlap with each other. Like, for example, last fall, we had the discussion about, because I agree with this, it would be a shame for us to build a new sidewalk on the frontage on Boston Street at this 40B site, and then tear it up 6 months later, because now we're gonna widen the lane. I mean, that's just silly for all of us. So there might be a time and a place to create some way where we can convert the value of one thing to something else to make things make more sense for the final package. And that's my hope. It's just trying to figure out when that happens and what the pieces are. Because, yes, housing makes the MassWorks grant, so is the private contribution towards it. The value of the land, the value of what we already spent on the study, and then if there's other things that we could do that we still are contributing to the community, but it actually ends up into the long-term situation as opposed to.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe we
This
could
is why I
structure,
said
we could
it's more
structure
of a
like.
Venn diagram,
Yeah.
so I think if we get creative when we start drafting this decision, we'll do it collaboratively.
Right,
If we could have some interconnectivity that provides people the room to kind of dodge and weave a little bit, but still joins these up, and so that everyone is aware of what all the pieces are, that no one has blinders on with it, and that the incentives for both parties are following through on on all the three components that you mentioned. I don't think it's hard, and I don't think it has to be restrictive, but.
I think at the end of the day, we want it to be successful collectively, you know, for the community and for your project. We don't want your project to not be successful, right? That doesn't serve anyone.
Absolutely. And I guess I would say, I'm certainly open to trying to talk that through and figure that out. I'm trying to manage risk, and the other thing I'm trying to manage is my appetite for what I can do beyond, mitigation is heavily influenced by if I get sued to oblivion for the next 5 years, frankly, as much as I like to pay John. And so, that's a major component here. And so what I worry about with enmeshing things is then we create a record of obligations that are not actually mitigating the project, but become something that survive what could be
Right.
a painful process. And
Part
I
of
want to
it-
avoid that painful process.
And we'll see what John says and you say in the response. The way I drafted the development agreement on this, or this MOU on the turning lanes,
Yeah, I
is
read
to make it as risk, it's really, we have a big role in it too, and both parties have to be rowing in the same direction, and that if for whatever reason it didn't work from an engineering perspective or a cost perspective, then, build your sidewalk and whatever. But I tried to draft it in a way that it's not like a poison pill or anything like that, and it's not creating this layer of risk that impacts the margins over here. So that was my goal in doing it. I think that's the select board's goal too.
That's our goal as well.
Yeah.
For sure.
Is there anyone here from the public that has any questions relative to traffic? There's got to be something.
I think you covered them all.
I think we covered them all.
I
Okay,
think you did.
so, anything else from the applicant tonight? And what's next?
So the other items we had on the agenda were to review waivers, and there was a bullet point to discuss, begin discussing the decision conditions, which my understanding from talking to John, who I believe conferred with Jay, was probably more so Jay polling all of you, as opposed to obviously us having an active discussion. We're not there yet, but that was my understanding of what were some of the topics I had raised. So John will present the waiver. We submitted the updated waivers table based on, now that we have sort of firmed up plans. And I forgot to mention earlier, I'm sorry, so we did, as part of our submission for this meeting, we did submit a revised set of the full plan set. So it reflects the architecture, the landscaping design, and the revised civil engineering, so that serves as the basis for this waivers table discussion.
Good evening. For the record, John Smolak, attorney for the applicant. As Lars had indicated, we provided an updated set of and list of waivers that were modified based on the latest site plans. And so conceptually, because we're dealing with a comprehensive permit, what we try to do is consolidate all local approvals through a single permit, which is the comprehensive permit. And so in our thought process in going through this, the waivers, and going through the bylaws, we looked at the general bylaws and the zoning bylaws and identified certain items that we felt needed to be waived. The waivers are broken down into either what we call administrative or process waivers versus more substantive waivers, such as waivers of setbacks and the like. And so that was our thought process in going through the waivers. And Jay, I'm not sure, or the chair, how you'd like to go through these waivers.
Well, I mean, it's really up to the board. I tend not to worry about the dimensional stuff because we have the site plan. So if you like the site plan where things are, then you're going to grant all the dimensional waivers for it. If there's things that are more esoteric or more process or on some of the other more general bylaw fronts or even zoning, then fine. But I leave it to the board. I mean, you see the project, if you like it, you're going to grant all the dimensional waivers to build it. So,
I mean, so do we want to go through each and every one of these, and are we voting on those right now? or-
I don't think you have to vote on them. I mean, I just don't think there has to be a robust discussion
Okay.
on dimensional stuff, because the way I draft a decision is, because I think it doesn't help either the applicant or you, is to try and list every single dimensional one. I like to have, for at least the dimensional stuff, not fees, not things like that, just dimensional stuff, have one sweeping thing, granted all.
In accordance with the site plan.
Right,
Period.
yeah, grant all waivers necessary to build a building in the location with the associated stuff, and the dimensional waivers are granted accordingly. And we can get into a table that might have some of the other things. Generally, we don't do too much in the way of waivers of fees, for other things, but then there might be more esoteric waivers here or process-oriented ones that John wants to discuss. But I don't think it's a good use of your time. We can pick it up a little bit during deliberation.
Sure. The only one I got one that jumps out is just the streets.
Just let me go back to this. Are members okay with council's recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, the only one I'm just gonna highlight is the excavation in streets, considering it's not on the property. And this comes up on all my 40Bs, and we typically don't grant that because that's for bonds and insurance and working in the road, right? So you're not working on the property. Typically, this is all covered for things that are in the property. And my council's weighed in at least on that. So it always comes up and,
Just
something
did a decision 2 days ago where it was 100% compliance with all town standards and bylaws for any off-site infrastructure. I mean, sometimes there can be minor waivers on things like that, but, generally speaking, it's got to mesh all the other requirements because it's off-site, you need to know what's under the ground. So.
Cool, yeah. So as long as that's clear. Yep.
Okay.
Well, in particular, if I may,
Yes,
Mr. Chair. Just addressing that one, that's on page 2, streets and sidewalks, chapter 206. Again, under the thought process of consolidating permits through a single comprehensive permit, what we've done is maintain the performance standards. So we wouldn't be changing the standards for the permit, but the permit would be issued through the zoning board of appeals.
Right, that's fine, that's a process. You don't even have to ask for that waiver. I think you're talking about the road construction standards or off-site infrastructure standards that the town employs.
Yeah, but typically you file a permit to do that, right? And I know the whole comprehensive idea and it covers everything, but keep in mind, there's also like the procedural stuff though, right? So that's how the town gets their bonds and insurance. It's more about the construction component because the contractor isn't necessarily doing that.
Right.
And we don't have enough detail, I can tell you right now, to confirm that you meet the ADA requirements for any off-site stuff. We don't have rating that shows to that level.
We could nominally grant a road opening permit through the comprehensive permit, but then have it be subject
To this, yep.
through
Yeah, that works.
the processes that you need to go through in order to do that work.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's
So-
fine. Yep.
We have no problem with that. That's fine.
The other one is, can we just talk about the parking in Middleton Square waiver?
It's a bizarre one.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's a bizarre one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's, I think the intent was to restrict parking, on-street parking in the business district of Middleton Square.
I think that's back before it became 4 lanes, and there used to be parking along the sides. Because I don't see where people would park.
There's no on-street parking in Middleton Square currently.
Well, except for where it's, yeah, there is, right, for a little further up, right?
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
like
I'm
right
talking
by, like,
Middleton-
Central
When I
Street.
think of Middleton Square, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, this
Middleton
area,
Square
yeah.
Proper.
Right.
And so basically what we're trying to do is make sure this doesn't apply to this particular project on site. Although the intent is really to deal with on-street parking, but it doesn't say that in the general bylaw, the way it was drafted.
There you go.
So
What does the bylaw say, John?
it just says no,
No person shall park a motor vehicle for a period to exceed 2 hours between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. in the area known as Middleton Square, bounded and described as the business district.
Yeah.
Middleton zoning map.
It's unfortunate.
Well,
is that
Town
really-
employees
I'm
are
assuming that only applies to on-street. though.
got-
Well,
usually
here's the
that's what it would
thing,
be.
here's the thing beyond that. In the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you cannot park on state highway,
right.
period. Regardless of what any of this says, right? You can't park on state highway.
I don't think
Anytime.
anyone would interpret it as
It-
affecting parking on your property.
I would
Well, I would hope
agree
not,
with that,
but-
yeah.
Say that again?
It's a parking regulation is what
Yeah,
it is.
it's not
It's
about
like a
parking
separate-
on your own
Right.
private property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're on the same page. But
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Did you see the question mark above my head when I was looking at it? Okay. is there anything
I
else?
figured that was for like delivery trucks or something, just to be like, you can't just have like a Budweiser truck like out front of like the
Right.
liquor store for that long.
And it used
Right.
to happen, actually.
Right.
That's what I mean.
There were
I-
issues,
I
yeah.
feel like there was
There was
maybe.
advertising and
No ordinance,
disgruntled
ordinance.
people issues around that.
This was just to
yeah.
get people moving.
So do the members have any other question on any other of these waivers?
No, sir.
At this point, I
Counselor,
don't-
anything that you want to bring to our attention?
No, I mean, I want you to do the permit that you want, and then if there's waivers to back into, I like to deal with it at the end.
Okay.
On a site. I mean, I do not, there are council that like to have an Exhibit A with the waivers. I don't think it's necessary, honestly.
Okay.
I'm happy to do it if that's what the board wants to do, but my experience is that there are some waivers that get lost in the shuffle. So there might be some specific things we talk about on fees and other things, and what Bill mentions on the off-site infrastructure work, but aside from that, if you're going to grant a permit, we can usually figure out a way to deal with it more with omnibus conditions.
Members, are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Many,
Okay with
yeah,
that?
yes, many of the waivers are process waivers, and we can certainly discuss that later if the board desires to do that. That's fine, that's typically what we experience.
Anyone from the public have anything they want to offer on this? Okay. All right, anything else this evening?
So for next meeting, though,
Our next meeting.
how do you want to prepare for the next meeting? Do you want to have a draft of conditions to go over so that the board can take a look at it before we get to a meeting? Or start talking about the
I
conditions?
think we're getting close to establishing conditions, are we not?
I would agree.
Right, I was going to say maybe we could have a draft of conditions for
Yes.
the board to review before the meeting.
That would be helpful.
That would be good.
I think that's
So
the
when
point of the
is the
special
next?
meeting that we're having, right?
March 7th.
Is to review those
Bill,
conditions.
I
Bill
can't be
here
at
for
that one. I'm already skipping the Bruins tonight, so I'm not skipping them again. I got those tickets because we weren't typically meeting. So if we could push that a week, or if that's cool with everybody, to make it the 14th instead.
Is that okay with you, Lars? Everybody's looking.
I don't know if we could get the room, but I can try.
You have a big porch at your house, right?
I do. Big backyard, too.
That would be
Yes, it works for us.
March 14th?
Jay, are you available?
I am available. I have a busy day, but I'll be available in the evening.
All right, so we'll move the meeting to March 14th. Is that okay with everybody? All
Let me
right,
just-
because I think it's important that Mr. Renault is in attendance.
I don't think I'd be able to vote, right?
And I'll try several days before that to have at least the boilerplate side of it.
Okay.
And-
That gives you
and-
another
and
week as
What
well.
I've heard tonight, a little bit as well, but
Okay,
Yeah, makes sense.
all right.
I have a
Excellent.
trial the week before, but I should be able to get it together.
You
Lars,
got an extra week.
I don't have the original schedule in front of me that you presented that had all the, sort of the milestones. Can you just kind of quickly bring us from right now, what you anticipated from this point forward?
Sure. So what we had in the status update was after tonight's meeting was meeting on March 7th, now March 14th. We talked just more about the decision conditions and public comments and board questions, if there's any wanted follow-up on any of the previously discussed matters. And then the next meeting was March 28th, which would be, again, a discussion on conditions, public comment, but then was scheduled for closing the hearing and the board to vote on the comprehensive permit, is what we had on that schedule.
Okay,
Seems workable.
all right. Is there anything else anyone has, the applicant? Hearing none, and I'll accept a motion to continue to
March 14th.
March 14th.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Renault. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So moved. Thank you.
See you for
All right.
14th.
Thanks for working with my schedule.
14th and the 28th.
All right, next up is 223 Maple Street. Applicant is Middleton Management LLC, site plan approval for modified site plan for a new use, a liquor store.
We do have one letter, just,
And we have one letter? Okay.
just so you know.
So why don't you,
Good evening, Jill Mann here on behalf of Middleton Management LLC, the owner of the property that is a convenience store, self-service gas station, and now it will be a full liquor store. This was one of the home rule petition licenses that were given out by the town in this summer, basically. So last time we were before the board, there were some concerns relative to fine details about the replacement of some of the fascia boards on the building. See you later, Jay. In particular by Ms. Cody. And in addition to that, we still had to go through the Conservation Commission hearing, and we did finish that, and there were a couple of changes to the plans that I could point out. Is this the one, Katrina, the most recent one that Kristen
Yes,
approved?
with the Concom changes. You weren't able to get ADA changes.
Because I don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
I'll explain it. So I have a hard copy of it because I wasn't sure if it would make it, so I have them, so you're welcome.
I got one.
Okay, you want them? Sorry, I don't want to make that noise. Basically, what the Concom had wanted was a fence that surrounded the dumpster enclosure. There was always an enclosure, but believe it or not, there was no back fence around the back part of the enclosure. So the Concom asked for that to be done, and that was done. In addition, there was a fence put on. If you remember, one of the neighbors had been complaining that they wanted a fence in the back, so when people drove into the particular parking spaces in back of the building, it wouldn't shine off into the residential neighborhood that's about 500 feet behind. So you'll see that there was a fence put back in. The fence is before the stormwater management facility in order to protect that from any basically debris, and as well to protect the wetlands that are located right behind it, with which the Conservation Commission actually liked. We did resubmit the floor plans and the renderings. One of the concerns is this like just flipping? Or is it?
No.
No, okay. One of the concerns was that we weren't actually replacing those fascia boards. We are, and it says we're going to replace them with that maintenance-free material, AZAC, basically. So that will go in front, and then we will replace the brick. One of the concerns, actually, though, I wanted to point out, that was raised by the building inspector, because we did readjust some of the parking to make it more user-friendly, was that some of the handicap spaces may in fact not be ADA compliant. The engineer, I got the comment a couple of days, maybe, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before, from Mr. Fitzpatrick, and I could not get the engineer to address the issue. However, I will note that we have 3 handicap parking spaces. We really only need 2, first. And then second, changes that are required to address accessibility issues don't even require any form of site plan approval, as you know. You just do what you need to do to make things accessible if it's for handicap purposes. Notwithstanding that, if there's a change, we would obviously come in with a minor modification before this board at a public meeting and give you any changes we had to the layout of those parking spaces. So this is what we're talking about. Remember this, Ms. Cody? These are where they're kind of a little worn. So we're replacing all of those and on the side with those AZAC materials. And that was really basically what we had to come back to you with.
well, we have a couple letters, or a letter.
Perfect.
One letter.
Madam Clerk?
This is from Scott Fitzpatrick, Building Inspector.
Yes.
Dated February 14th. He was just reviewing the new layout. Handicap parking spots do not appear to comply to 521 CMR. The designated van spot is 9 feet wide. The adjacent access aisle is scaling at 4 feet, not the required 8 feet access aisle. The access aisle is allowed to reduce to 5 feet if the spot width is increased to 11 feet.
Can you show us the spot? Like, can you zoom in while
I
she's?
think he's talking about, because at the end,
I think you can zoom if you
right
wanna
here?
try.
Let's
This is at the end.
finish with Mr. Fitzpatrick's letter, and then we'll get to it.
I'm not sure you have the room to increase the aisle width without encroaching on the drive aisle at the gas pumps. The 2 rear handicap spots are showing access aisles 4 feet, not the required 5 feet. The drive aisle in this location is already narrow and scaling at about 12 feet 6 inches. These spots do not show the required accessible route to the building entry. Typically, the general conditions allow me to approve modifications for AAB compliance. In this case, due to the tight clearance changes to comply may be a major modification. I've attached the 521 CMR 23 for reference. That is all.
So I guess the first question is, the plan is currently showing 4 handicap spots, is that right?
3. So this is the space that Mr. Fitzpatrick was talking about. And right back here too. See, 2 more. We only need 2 parking spaces. And the original location of both parking spaces had been on this side of the building, which we can repeat. Or we can put one of the handicap spaces on this area, which we can make the space accessible. So we do have the ability. When I talked to Mr. Fitzpatrick, his concern was 3 spaces, trying to make them all accessible. But now that we only really have, that one that we have to tweak and then the one on the other side, I think we can probably do it. But again, if it does require a major modification, we would have to come back.
Well, I mean, I think the intent is that when we're approving a plan, it complies, as opposed to approving a non-compliant plan only for you to come back later to fix it. So, but I want to go to the members. Craig, you had a comment or a question?
I just wanted to zoom in so while we were reading it, I could actually see what he was talking about.
Yeah, this.
I can't read, my
right here.
eyes.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I can't.
I can read it again if you want to go through it.
No, I've read it 4 times already. I've already written the conditions that we're going to attach.
Yes, that's right here. So this space, we absolutely do have room to be able to push it down and make it larger. Where you have the pinch point is right here. Hold on, I didn't mean to hit that right here.
Why do we have 4 handicap spaces in the first place if we only need 2?
3 you have.
3, sorry.
You know what, honestly, I asked that too, and never got an answer.
So I guess my feeling is that the question is whether making the modification is a minor or major modification. That we condition it that any change to the site plan due to compliance with 53 CMR or whatever is subject to approval of the building commissioner and shall be considered a minor modification.
Because he's not going to approve it like this.
Correct. No, like, hold on.
I think so, it was a major.
The condition being,
In order to.
approval is subject to a determination by the building commissioner that all parking is compliant with 521 CMR 23. Any modification to the site plan necessary to comply with 521 CMR 23 shall be subject to approval by the building commissioner, and if approved by the building commissioner, shall be considered a minor modification. So if he approves it, you just submit the plan to the file, and you don't even have to come back. Because when you come back for a minor modification, you're not submitting what your modification is. You're asking us to determine whether it's minor or major. So we're already determining now that if you have to make a site plan change, a minor modification, a modification to your site plan that is approved by the building commissioner that is strictly related to this regulation, that it is a minor modification.
Does it affect the total parking summary if they fix these? Like, are we gonna then be out of compliance with the required amount of parking?
Cannot, we have to have 30 spaces, so under no circumstances we are reduced. It's not because we need it, but it was because when they got the approval from the selectmen for the liquor license, the selectmen required 30 spaces, so we cannot ever go below that.
Mr. Manal?
So I'm looking at the email from Scott that's in our Google Drive, and he's saying that with the tight clearances, changes to comply may be major modifications. So
Right, but I'm saying it's not.
You're saying it's not.
Right, I'm saying we add the condition that it's not, like we are
Oh, I
voting
see what you're
as a
saying.
condition.
Okay.
that it is-
Or
that-
it's up to him.
He's saying it's no. Our general conditions allow for 1 foot.
Yeah.
He's saying to move the space, it will probably require moving more than 1 foot.
Yeah.
I'm saying if you have to move it more than the 1 foot, In this case, the specific condition added to this special permit will be that they can make the changes to the site plan in accordance with 521 CMR 23 only, if approved by the building commissioner. That's a
Subject to the
minor
building
modification.
commissioner.
So
Oh, I see what you're
that,
saying, yep.
so that way he's not restricted by the general condition requirement that it be less than 1 foot moved
I got you.
with the
I'm
footprint.
down, I'm down there.
Ann,
Yeah, no,
other Ann.
I'm looking at the landscaping here. Is this all existing landscaping or landscaping you're adding? It's kind of hard to see the print
It's kind
on
of
this.
both, so can you zoom out, Katrina? So as you know, this is a lot of grass now. We're adding,
It says existing
trees.
canopy trees.
yeah, and then this right here, we're adding to, right here, Ms. Cody, can't really read what he's,
It says annual planting or something.
annual thing,
Annual
you've got better
bed,
eyes than me.
So those 4 trees are existing trees or adding trees?
No, they're additional trees. That is open and clear in that direction.
Okay, because last time they came to us, we had landscaping plans that never really happened.
And I think they were on it. I think that's the whole point, is that this time, we'll make sure the building inspector won't approve until the landscaping is done. Remember how you were reading that old decision? I think that old decision had some of this landscaping on it and it never materialized.
It looked terrible when what was there never really was maintained.
So that'll be.
So, yeah, that's a huge issue, because that is like the blight corner of the street.
And it does say that in your general conditions that we have to comply. And Scott pretty much forces that and won't give the occupancy permits till we're done with it, so.
Do you have a color?
No, and that's how we should be, and that's why I think it's important, like, that we have a little bit of flexibility to add a specific condition to a specific property to make, variations to the general conditions, because it's important, I think, moving forward.
that's just Google
Ann,
Maps.
anything else?
So, the colors are staying the same?
Yes. Because it's red brick now. I mean, you can paint
Yeah,
it.
no, that's fine. I like the red brick's fine. But what about the A&M sign over the door, which is kind of awful looking?
Yeah, I mean,
Is that,
believe it or not, that's not even his sign, but it is the sign of that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to stay the same. They're going to update it because they're going to take down that fascia material. I mean, this, everything.
I don't want to see that sign go back up, is my point. Is that the name of the store?
Yep. Yes.
It's a pretty bad sign. I mean, it needs to be updated.
But how do you feel?
What? How do you what?
I said, but how do you feel?
Well, the building really needs updating, is my point, and it's not at the moment. But that sign looks just as bad, paint-wise, lettering-wise, all that, as the rest of the front. So we're just hoping that's going to look a lot better.
Can you have Katrina, can you put up what they're looking at? Because everybody
It's
nobody's
paper.
looking at the.
Yeah, it looks like a
It's
paper
the-
sign, right?
Yeah, it's the one,
just looks
it's the
cheap.
colored one, right?
Yeah,
Are
it
you
just
looking
looks
at the
cheap.
picture
I'm just
or
looking
the
at
actual
Google
No,
Maps.
we're
rendering?
looking at a Google map of
You're
it.
looking at the Google map one?
So, I mean, and I've been looking at that sign every time I stop there, which is every week, but
Yeah, there's a
to get
Google.
gas, but that sign is pretty.
I mean, put it this way, we are so right now, Ms. Cody, we are gonna do a new sign. So if you wanted to, you can always condition it that the signs be of the same material and same,
Make
Well,
them
yeah, they
consistent.
gotta look,
basic, you could require that we replace it. 'Cause this could come down when we put down, if you made that a condition, I'd have to do it.
are they like front lit, back lit?
No, they're
Wooden
paper.
paper?
or
They're
something.
paper
I
now,
think
yeah.
they're
Paper?
I think they're like poster board
they're
or
kind of-
vinyl.
That's what I'm
like-
saying, they're
Oh,
not
they're
great signs.
they're gonna be internally illuminated. 'cause
Internally?
It's too hard to keep the, they carved signs, those are too hard to upkeep because they get damaged. So it's an internally illuminated, this one will be internally illuminated sign. And I'm sure, in, compliance with the regulations, and then this one, you can require me to match them. And that's how you
It
can do
should
it.
match at a minimum, I would
And
think.
that's
It's
the
the
point.
same company,
They're
right?
plywood now.
They are plywood, right?
It says
Are
it
they
right,
even-
it says it right on the plan.
So they're staying plywood?
No.
No.
No, 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 no. No.
I believe they are internally illuminated signs.
I'm gonna flip this sideways.
Yeah.
No, the
I know,
sign-
this doesn't let us-
Replace existing plywood signage band with new composite materials panel and trim.
That's the background for the sign.
I mean, they should replace the signs.
Where'd you find that?
No, that's just the fascia
just the
board.
fascia.
That's the fascia
It's in
board. That's not the sign.
Signs are going to be internally illuminated signs.
Yeah, we gotta find it.
It doesn't say
We don't
that.
have that in our
I
packet
mean, what
anymore.
we do usually, you file in this, I mean, you're permitted by right to put up that kind of sign.
Oh, wait a minute, replace existing signage.
Right.
No, that's the signage band. That's the fascia.
We can just condition it to make sure it's done, right?
Yeah, just, we'll do it, we'll
Well, the
replace,
point is, they've got to look better. I
we'll
mean, they
replace
just,
the existing
look pretty
sign.
good.
And we'll
Real
put up an
signs?
internally illuminated sign that complies, obviously, with the site plan. I mean, I apologize with the sign requirement.
And there won't be a sign in the middle, that's the convenience store storage. Although it has its own door?
It does have its own door eventually. It probably will convert and no longer be the convenience store, like all the separations, but right now it is their storage. So this unit itself is simply storage, like if you walk by it, there's nothing in it.
So you're saying it might be a store someday?
Maybe someday.
A different store? Like a second store?
Yeah, yeah. Because you can never, when the selectmen approved the liquor license, it said that you could not have any other use inside that store. You couldn't, sometimes they have convenience stores.
They can't combine the two.
You can't combine anything. You can't have coffee, nothing. It has to be a standalone.
Okay, so do we know what we're doing?
All exterior wall signs shall be internally illuminated.
There you go. All right. I just have a comment. And Jill, you represent a lot of these folks. There was another filing at our last meeting, close by to here, where the parking space was 8.1 feet. Today, we have plans where the handicap stalls are not the proper dimension. So when you're working with your team, before a plan comes before us, can you have them make sure that, what they're proposing is sort of standard stuff, so then we have to go through this back and forth stuff of having deliberate or approve something that's not standard? Because I'll vote no. I'm one vote, but I'm gonna vote no.
I appreciate hearing it because I argue and fight. That's all I do. So I love hearing that.
So you can let them know, it ain't gonna fly.
Perfect. I don't mind hearing that at all.
An 8.1 foot, I was like, that was the best one so far. Anyway, okay. Is there any from the public has any comment or question on this? Yes, ma'am. Name and address, please.
Sharon Bonnier, 6 Bouchard
Speak up a
Drive.
little bit.
Sharon Bonnier, 6 Bouchard Drive, and I live right behind the gas station. And one question I have is that the gas station right now closes at 10 p.m. Will that be the same for the liquor store?
Yes, it's actually closed a little bit earlier, but 10 p.m. is the max time.
Okay. And you addressed the fence, and also I was on the call with the Conservation Committee, the Zoom meeting, and they're planning to put, you didn't mention it, a fence around the rubbish.
Oh, I did mention it. Yep.
Oh, you did mention it? I didn't hear it.
That's okay.
Yep, and I don't know what kind of fence they're putting up there.
So the fence they're putting up is actually the chain link with slats. So, because it's more stable, so you have a chain link fence, but then you have slats in them, privacy slats, so you can't see inside.
Okay, on the call, they said that they weren't going to do that. Initially, they had that as chain link, and then they were going to change it to wood.
They will have to do that, or they won't get occupancy.
You know what, actually, if you read Kristen's conditions, I apologize, Kristen Kent, the conservation agent, she actually did want to make it wood, didn't she, on the call?
Well, we talked about it,
Okay,
and I
one second,
mentioned,
yeah.
that the gas station right in downtown Middleton has a lovely white enclosure around their trash bins, because, we have a concern. I've been there, living there 31 years, and the trash always overflows and goes into the waterway, into the drainage for the Ipswich River. So, just concerned about that, and also the fact that it's been ongoing, and there are plans to do more to this establishment, but why is the trash still there and not being addressed? And I just wonder how much clout the town has to push that along, because it's really disgraceful, and it's just so wrong for the trash to build up there and then to flow into the Ipswich.
I think it's a combination of not just this site, but another site, but I'm not going to.
Is the trash on
Have
this?
you
notes
ever
say they're
seen
gonna
it?
remove
Have you,
the
have you
debris
seen the
from the
trash?
Yeah, they have to remove some debris.
It's
from
on
the
here
wetland.
that they're removing debris
Is
from
this,
the
is this where this trash is, where we're talking about, is this on their property?
So if it's in the wetland, no. So I'm going to show you.
But it says on the notes they're going to do it.
No, that's
We're
fine.
going to do it, but here's the wetland line, it's off property. But I think Mukesh had agreed to do it, so the fact that it's, it's in the condition, we're bound by it, so it'll happen. And then with regard to the dumpster, I mean, there's a fence, it's going to prohibit trash from going, and what they were doing is putting chain link. And then if you're concerned that they're not going to put up the privacy slats, this board can require that they do so. Usually, you don't really want to put that plastic material around a dumpster because you have these large trucks coming in and they're not gentle. I mean, they bang and
You end up with a lot of
destroy.
broken plastic around the
A lot of
trash.
broken plastic, and it just
I
looks
can
worse.
vouch for
So
that.
sometimes you're better with the chain link, but, the board is able to condition this however it sees
Are you
fit.
familiar with what we're talking about with the slats?
Yeah, you're talking about the chain link and then the plastic that
Yeah.
goes throughout that, yeah.
And that provides privacy without providing for a fence that really has a lot of
And
inherent.
if there was paper or stuff blowing around, it's gonna catch it.
Right. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right. What's your pleasure?
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
So how are these ponds sized? Like, what was the process for that? I don't see any drainage info on any of this. Was this supposed to be, 'cause I thought it was going, wasn't it because it was on the previous plan? Is that what it was? You had drainage before that was supposed to be installed?
He did, but he didn't.
He didn't
I
do it.
think
Is
he
this just
needed to
mimicking?
get more- I think it was with Kristen, because we filed the notice of intent, so we're required to actually file the stormwater, and I think it went through, I know it went through her. So I'm sure that these ponds actually were discussed with her. I honestly, Mr. Romel, I don't know how they sized them. I can't even answer your question.
Because I don't see any like outlet. They're just gonna fill up and spill everywhere, right? I mean, that's not really how you design these, so I'm just kind of curious why. It's not at least before us, because we look at that stuff too, so.
Yeah, I didn't even go to the conservation hearing, that the engineer went, I didn't go to it either.
I'd just like to understand why. I mean, if it's supposed to mimic what was originally approved, then I don't have an issue, but if it's not, then.
This is more than what was originally approved, because I think that when they had done it originally, I don't know that they put everything in the way they were supposed to.
I remember from the last time you were here that there were ponds shown that weren't constructed when we compared the two plans that you provided us. So if this is just mimicking that, then I have no problem, but if it's,
I'm pretty
if
sure
it's
it
something
is,
else.
but I can't represent. All I can tell you is that Kristen Kent is looking at it, and they have to file a stormwater permit with her if they haven't already, and she has to approve them.
Yeah, but some of we.
Yeah.
Well, no, you're not approving those stormwater basins. She does the permit.
It's in our charge.
It is, you can.
It's 100% in our charge.
But my whole point was, is the permit goes through her.
Yeah, and typically she calls me and asks me to review them, so I'm just kind of curious how that
Okay.
happened. Yeah, so. I mean.
Are you comfortable or not? If you're not,
I mean, I think it's probably better than what's there, so, yeah, I guess I'll let it go. I don't know. Yeah. Make a motion.
Well, hang on one second. Do you want a condition that the drainage must mimic or be better than the previous, that was on the previous plan? You wanna have some
I don't
sort of
think we need it because it went through conservation already. They already have a permit, so in theory, they would have had to have done a report for that.
Okay.
But going forward, Jill, I mean, I would consider this an incomplete submission, to be perfectly honest with you, and shouldn't actually be here until we have it, so that's my position. Let's go with it.
Okay, I will accept the motion.
Go for it.
Mr. Motion.
Did you get all those comments?
Mr. Chair, I move that the board make the following findings. First, that the change in use and associated modifications to the property protect the legitimate interests of adjoining property owners and provide benefits to the town and neighborhood that outweigh any adverse effects. Number two, consonant with the neighborhood. The first one was benefits outweigh detriments. Second one is consonant with the neighborhood. The redevelopment of the property as a retail establishment is better aligned with neighborhood uses than the industrial uses. The modifications improve the overall design of the property. Petitioner will maintain fencing along the rear border to block car lights from shining onto abutting properties. 3, compliance. The petitioner satisfied the submittal requirements of 9.5.5 of the bylaws, and the property and building continue to comply with or have received relief from the dimensional density and height requirements or regulations of the bylaw. Number 4, parking and safe travel. Petitioner's renovations to the parking area will improve vehicle and pedestrian traffic throughout the property. Modifications provide ample loading areas and parking spaces to accommodate all uses, including the store, and continue to ensure convenient and safe access throughout the property and do not negatively impact the ability for visitors, occupants, and first responders to safely enter, exit, and navigate safely throughout the property. Vehicles entering and exiting the property will continue to have more than sufficient sight distance to travel safely onto and throughout the property. Number 5, the utilities and lighting. The modifications do not negatively impact compliance with lighting, signage, landscaping, septic system capacity, water, electric service, waste disposal requirements, stormwater, and drainage requirements. 6, protecting the natural environment. The modifications do not negatively impact the natural environment based on the change from automotive repair to retail establishment, which does not involve any hazardous materials. The change will eliminate existing risks to the environment. Property and all modifications will comply with all current safety, energy, stormwater management, Title V, and building code requirements. 7, fiscal benefit. The assessed value of the property will increase with the redevelopment and therefore will generate additional tax revenue for the town without any additional burdens on the town's infrastructure. Period.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Me.
1 opposed.
Mr. Chair, based on those findings, I will move to modify, based on those findings, the board's authority to grant such relief under section 9.4 of the bylaws, I move to modify the site plan approval under 9.511, subject to the general conditions and special conditions attached hereto, specifically in regards to the conditions. Special condition number 1, unless otherwise approved by the Middleton Select Board, the facility is prohibited from combining the convenience store and must remain a dedicated liquor store. 2, all approvals are subject to receiving approval from the Middleton Conservation Commission, specifically related to stormwater management. 3, approval is subject to a determination by the building commissioner that all parking is compliant with 521 CMR 23. Any modification to the site plan necessary to comply with 521 CMR 23 shall be subject to approval by the building commissioner, and if so approved by the building commissioner, shall be considered a minor modification. 4, all exterior wall signs shall be internally illuminated. Anything else?
That the chain link fence with privacy slats
Well,
shall
with
be,
privacy slats.
shall be,
In that the chain link fence surrounding the trash, or the trash, enclosure shall be chain link fence with embedded slats. Does it say embedded on there? I can't read it because nobody wants to zoom in for me. Does it say embedded already on there?
you want these?
No, embedded in
I didn't see
concrete.
it
Or just
anywhere.
embedded in the concrete? All right, I can't really read that well. All right, will include the slats.
So I just have one question. Do we need to say that all these conditions need to be in place prior to occupancy, or does the building commissioner
No, these are the conditions that need to be met prior to occupancy.
Prior to
That's it. I mean, that's how they are.
All right. And we had the wall sign in there?
We did.
Okay.
Internally illuminated.
Internally illuminated.
Is there anything else relative to conditions, members?
No, that was it. That covers it.
Time, did you
All of
want
it?
to add time?
Times, do we have to do that, or is that
So I think the
selectmen's?
select board covers the
Okay.
license and how the hours of operation for the business.
It's covered by the.
Okay.
Liquor license.
And there's no need to mention the time of day.
We did it in the liquor license.
It's in the liquor license. Okay?
Does the maintenance of the landscaping have to be mentioned, or, I mean, putting it in is one thing, but maintenance is another?
It has to meet the general conditions.
We never do, okay.
Okay.
That's an enforcement issue.
Okay. So there's a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One opposed.
Thank you very much, appreciate your time tonight.
Good luck.
Good night.
All right, next up, new public hearings, 334 North Main Street, S&K Industrial Properties.
Okay.
Mr.
Scott.
Chair, you only have 4 members, just,
Oh.
I'm recused on this.
All right. Mr. Hartwell is recusing himself?
Scott 5 Company LLC requests a modification of a special permit and site plan approval for the replacement of an existing pocket wetland with a subsurface retention system for the property at 334 North Main Street. Public hearing held on February 15th at Fuller Meadow. Information at the town clerk's. We have letters. Want them now, or you want to wait?
We have letters.
All right, from Justin Saltzback, nothing from him. From Katrina, Kristen Kent, this application came before the Concom on 2/7/24. The commission requested that the work be shifted outside of the 25-foot no disturb zone and continued the application to their next meeting on March 6, 24. From the planning board dated February 14th, at the February 14th meeting of the planning board, members reviewed the modified site plan review application to replace the pocket wetland with a subsurface retention system for the property at 334 North Main. The board voted unanimously 4-0 to offer a positive recommendation to the ZBA, subject to the addition of suitable native vegetation along the bank on the east side of the proposed retention system. And that is it.
You're on.
Good evening. For the record, John Moran from the Moran Cameron Group. We're here tonight representing Scott 5 Company LLC for a modification request to a special permit that was issued by the zoning board back in October of 2016. So our company was hired by the owner to assist them in closing out the existing permits with the zoning board and the Conservation Commission. We had gone out, done an as-built. We had determined that the pocket wetland that's right out front by 114 was smaller than designed. When we informed our client about that, he asked us, well, since I got to fix this, is there anything else we could do? Because this is a maintenance nightmare with the trash coming in from 114. So we had looked at the possibility of replacing that pocket wetland with an underground retention system. The board may recall back in early summer last year, I was before this board. We had spoke to the building inspector to verify if this change would require us to come back before the zoning board. He had instructed us, he wanted us to come back before the zoning board. I was before you guys, like I said, early summer, and it was determined that you did require this modification request. Some things got put on hold. Again, that's why we're back here now. So what was done is the pocket wetland, 114 is at the top of the page. The pocket wetland's right about here. And we're expanding that underground infiltration chambers. Right now, there's the forebay right here before the water flows into that pocket wetland. We're installing a new forebay, which will have drainage pipes that gets the water into the chamber system. Then what we're doing is we're utilizing the existing outlet control structure that was used for this pocket wetland. We're reconfiguring the inside of that. We had submitted drainage calculations on how this all works. There's an existing level spreader on the outlet. We don't need one that large, but since it already exists, we're just going to leave it. We did appear before the Conservation Commission last week. One of the questions that they had was, if you look at the plans, you'll notice that we're grading the backside of, or the easterly side of where these chambers are going. A portion of that grading was within a brush, an area that's existing brush. Conservation Commission asked if we could rotate that system to get it out of that brush area so that we didn't have to change that. We can do that. We didn't want to revise the plans yet because we wanted to come before the zoning board first before we submitted those revised plans to the Conservation Commission. Katrina was nice enough to send the comments over to our office this morning. Once we read the comments from Kristen that the commission asked to stay out of the 25-foot, that's not exactly what was discussed at the hearing. Again, what was discussed at the hearing was that we stay out of the area that's currently wooded. Because by examining the plan, you'll see it's not possible to stay 25 feet from the wetlands with this grading. So we actually did call Kristen this morning and asked her about that comment, and she reiterated that, no, we were correct. It wasn't said that we're going to stay out of the 25-foot. It was that we were going to stay out of the area that was wooded. So I just wanted to clarify that. Again, we are going back before the commission, I believe, March 6th. And we'll have a revised plan for that. But the design was designed to mitigate for the original analysis. We went through the original drainage analysis, and we designed our system very similar to the pocket wetland. The pocket wetland was designed as dead storage. Our chambers are designed with dead storage as well. We're not taking into consideration any infiltration with those chambers themselves, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So we're still not through Concom, is that right?
No, we have to go back before conservation. So if the zoning board needs conservation approval before they can make their decision, that's fine. We'll just continue to the next hearing.
I mean, you guys, I mean, you're before us, but really, the whole intent of what you're doing is really contingent upon what Concom is deliberating?
Correct.
Right? And I'm going to go first to my esteemed member to my left here.
Esteemed.
Yes, you're esteemed.
No, I think it makes sense to me. The only question I had was the outlet of the chamber. You have a pipe shown, but you didn't on the plan tell what size it was, I don't think. So I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be like, are you considering that part of the system, and that you modeled it so that your outlet control structure is being modified, but you're not necessarily showing the
On
unit?
the detail of the chamber system on page 2, it specifies that it's a 12-inch.
Could I see it?
Yep.
I totally missed that when I reviewed it.
Right here.
Okay.
Proposed 12-inch PVC with the slope coming out of the chambers.
Okay, so you're basically using that as your outlet control structure, essentially?
Well,
Or did you include it in the model?
The outlet control structure is actually, what we did is we took the guts out of the only thing, the way this current manhole is, it's nothing more than a manhole with a 3-inch core on the back side of it. So we're gonna we're gonna plug the core, put a 12-inch outlet. Actually, let me state that. They actually cored a hole in the side of the manhole and butted the 12-inch pipe against it.
Okay.
So there's a 3-inch orifice.
Yeah, I got you.
So we're actually going to open that up.
Okay.
And we put this T in there to control what's coming out.
Right, so you did, but was the 12-inch modeled within the outlet control structure too?
The 12-inch coming in?
Yeah. Because that's kind of controlling the chambers themselves, right?
Yes.
That's kind of your first piece, right?
Yep.
You know,
So
to get it in.
Yes, I understand
You follow
your
what I'm
question. So
saying,
your
yeah.
question is, did the chamber system model a 12-inch pipe as an outlet?
Yeah.
And that's correct. Yes.
Okay, all right. So as long as that's the case, I'm good.
Okay. Do we want to wait for Concom?
I mean, well, you probably need to, because they're going to modify the plan, right?
Yeah.
So I would say just modify the plan and come back.
That's fine.
So we get the final one.
Yep.
It should be a quick one.
All right. Do you have any other questions? Yeah. Is there anyone here from the public that we can't see?
No.
All right. All right, I'll accept the motion that we continue this application until our meeting on
28th or the
The
14th?
20
28th or the
yeah.
14th?
the 28th.
The
correct?
28th.
28th, yeah.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, Bill moved it, and Ian seconded it.
Yeah.
And do we have any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. So moved.
Thank you very much.
See you in a month.
John, you got your check, right, for our project that you were doing for me? Did that get?
gotta
did it-
look.
Double check that, because it went through an insurance company, and I had some issues. I had to fall back on a couple of other
Bill,
consultants.
talking about.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. So, if you could, yeah, never mind. We could do that after the hearing.
Okay. Moving on. Is there the town planner report? Anything to report, Katrina?
I should let you know that the planning board has officially submitted their proposed zoning amendments to the select board. They did change the public hearing date to March 12th. So that'll be the public hearing date when everyone comes and listens to the
the
presentation.
planning board meeting.
This is the MBTA zoning, right,
Yeah.
for the planning board.
March 12th.
Also, if you check your email, I believe that member Anthony Tanner just resigned tonight. He just couldn't devote enough time to it. So we have a vacancy.
Okay. So what I would like to recommend, and I know that the select board generally will make those appointments to boards. I think it's important that this board have the opportunity to interview or speak with those who are going to be appointed.
I think they would welcome the input, truthfully.
Okay. So, and I'm happy to do that. I think the rest of the board would be interested perhaps as well, but whatever works and whatever's, but as opposed to, and don't get me wrong, I think it's great that we have well-meaning citizens, but I think that particularly with what comes before this board, it would be good to have someone that has some expertise that can support the board's decisions. So that's just my epistle, yet again. So, what do we need to do? Do I need to send a formal letter to the select board?
No,
behalf of the
I
board?
believe, I think Anthony sent it to you, but we can just forward that to the town administrator's office, and they'll take care of it.
Do we have to forward?
Do I
our
need to
request?
request, a formal request to the select
Oh,
board
no,
that we weigh in on?
I can ask for you, or you could send an email if you want, but I figured I would just tell Justin that we would like to provide some input into finding this new member.
Or if the select board has someone in mind, we want to speak with them before they're appointed.
So the way it happens with the planning board is it was a act of the legislature to change our town code to allow there to be 2 planning board alternates because, and they can act on anything. Usually alternates are only allowed to act on special permits or variances, and the ZBA, every single application you have before you needs a supermajority. Planning board, that isn't the case. So, but they have alternates that are allowed in our town code, and so we wrote the requirements for that, and they are appointed by the planning board and the select board. So the planning board has a joint meeting scheduled, I think, March 5th with the select board to appoint a new alternate member. So they
Was
get to
Tony an
provide
alternate?
input.
Was Tony an alternate?
Yes.
For us? Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
so Ann and Tony, right? Yeah, okay.
But this board doesn't usually do that because you're all appointed by the select board, and you're, the planning board is voted in. So, but I think the select board would welcome it, your input. At least the way I've seen them appoint members in the past. It's so hard to get people to volunteer, though, that you don't have a lot to choose from
Yeah, but
usually.
that doesn't mean you just appoint anyone.
No.
That doesn't help the process.
I don't know
And
if
it's
they-
not fair
I
to
don't
the
know if they
people
do
that they might be considering.
Yeah, I don't know if they do that, though, honestly.
What?
The select would just appoint anybody, I think.
No, I'm
No,
not saying.
they try to, yeah.
I think
But
they
we
do a
know-
good
I
job.
think we know better what we need in terms of what's lacking.
Oh, I
You know,
gotcha.
like, we need another lawyer, or we
Yeah,
need someone
Another
who's,
engineer,
knowledgeable and
Yeah.
whatever,
An architect would be good.
Because we have to interpret so many
We already have one.
things, yeah.
Hey, 2.
Even a builder,
I
though.
mean,
A builder
You
would
guys
be
should be
good.
happy with who you have on this board. This
We have a
board is
fairly good
stacked.
cross-section now.
Yeah.
This is the best cross-section we've had in years, honestly.
Oh, thank you.
It really
Thank
is.
you.
Well, it's true. I mean, at one point, all we had were 5 lawyers and me.
That sounds like
That didn't really help much. There's a lot of arguing going on.
I was going to assume that
So,
couldn't have been fun.
I think just to be on record, I may either call Justin or send him,
Yes.
write a letter, just requesting that
We all would like to.
that the zoning board would like to be part of the selection process.
Even if it's, they could invite you to the meeting.
They could also allow us to maybe provide comment on the resumes.
Yeah.
That might probably be the right approach. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think
Yeah.
they're necessarily going to want us interviewing or whatever.
I mean, the resume, if you've seen the application, is just, what kind of experience do you have? And it's very minimal. It's like one line.
Right.
People don't give the
You were a traffic
resumes per
engineer,
se.
yes, I have a driver's license.
Yes, it's pretty much that.
Yeah.
The application is
You could
pretty
ask-
darn
you could
minimal.
send them questions or comments.
I mean, they
I
talk
guess.
to them more in the meeting, but, the application itself, it's not really a resume. It's just
Mm-hmm.
an application.
Okay, all right, good. Anything else?
Nothing.
So I have an email right now from Tony.
Yes. I
Did
just,
you get it today?
I was checking my emails to see
Just
if
sent it.
Kristen had sent me about this new development that I didn't even hear about this afternoon.
What new development?
But John just explained that he called Kristen after I sent him
Oh, okay.
her comments, and I was like, oh, I don't see anything in my emails.
Here it is right here. Dear Madam Clerk and Chair Benevento, it is with regret that I am submitting my resignation of my seat effective immediately as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Due to family commitments, I am no longer able to commit the time this important position requires and deserves. I'm appreciative of the Board of Selectmen and members of the ZBA to allow me to serve while I was able. Sincerely, Anthony Tierno. That's in the record. All right. Does anyone have anything else? All right, without objection? So moved by Bill and seconded by Ann. You can pick whichever Ann you want for that.
Either one.
All right. We're adjourned. Thank you.